the crew were in that movie. Really, really good movie. All right, we are the Out of Bounds Show, 105.9 The Zone, ESPN. Steve Robertson, genespage.com, 247 Sports. Steve joins us on the Farm Bureau Insurance guest line. Steve, was it a big win? I mean, is two of three a big win, and should the fan base settle down after this weekend with Hail State baseball?
Well, before I answer that, I got to give you a Val Kilmer anecdote.
Yeah,
because I love it. I love it. Tombstone's the greatest movie of all time. But
it is.
The gateway movie for us with Val Kilmer was Real Genius.
Yeah,
and one of my favorite parts in that movie is when Jerry turns to him and he's like, "I need to see more of you in the lab." And Val Kilmer says, "Okay, I'll gain weight." It's just like, even then you could tell this guy was going somewhere. The next thing you know, he's in Top Gun, and it's just it's really sad. It truly is. And he was the guy too that got a little bit disenfranchised with Hollywood and kind of started speaking out, so they kind of blocked him out. You know, and one of the last interviews he did, he made the comment. He goes, "I should have played ball." He goes, "I should have played ball a little bit better, and been appreciative of the life that this industry had afforded me." And I think we all reached that point in some respects. But to your point about Mississippi State baseball, we talked about it last week. I mean, pretty much the bare minimum you needed last week was 3-1, right? And you were hoping to get a sweep. You didn't have to, but man, you really needed to get a sweep. But first SEC series win of the year, and I really thought yesterday, and I agree with Chris Lemonis' assessment, that was the best game they played against anybody all year. Pitching, defense, timely hitting. Probably could have tacked on a couple more runs late, but I thought yesterday was more indicative of what our fans expected to see from the Bulldogs this year.
Mm. So when it went to 6-0, I took a nap.
So did South Carolina.
Well, see, there you go.
And I think Stone Simmons, I think we talk about in-season adjustments, right? Finding roles for guys. Stone had never started here. And then, Parker tries to make him a starter, and he had some trouble early on, throwing enough strikes consistently. I do think we may have moved on for him a little too quickly. We mentioned the Oklahoma State game. He gets 3 ground balls in an inning to a teammate and doesn't get an out, and then he's out of the rotation the next week. But I think they found a place where he fits, and I was looking at some numbers earlier, and it's like, less than a hit per in his 10 innings of relief, and I don't think he's surrendered an earned run yet. But he was outstanding, spotted up that changeup, and I had a chance to see him yesterday after postgame. He's walking around with ice on his arm like they all do, and we're just kind of just visiting, and I told him, I said, those guys didn't quit. You beat them into submission with that changeup. And I thought he was really, really good yesterday. And it's kind of remarkable to think that State got through an SEC weekend only throwing 6 pitchers. I don't remember a time when that's happened.
Wow. Steve Robertson, genespage.com on the Out of Bounds Show. Mississippi State took 2 of 3 from South Carolina. And then they play Alabama this weekend, Steve?
Yeah, had the UAB on Tuesday, and then the weekend with Alabama. And Alabama is a good team, and Lemonis has owned Alabama. That's what's interesting. There's always that anomaly in the schedule, and it's kind of like when Joe Moorhead played Arkansas in football. I never know what Chad Morris did to Joe Moorhead, but Joe beat him ungodly. And since Lemonis has been here, they have really dominated the series, and so. In that respect, I think you got to go over there thinking, hey, we got to go win this series. And I don't think there's any question. The math is the math, right? I mean, you don't get an unlimited number of SEC games. You only get 30, and so you got to win every single one of them you can. But, more importantly, you got to go take care of UAB that has played Alabama really tight on a Tuesday night, and then they went into Auburn and beat Auburn, And so Casey Dunn and those guys, former coach at Samford, I mean, they're going to be excited to have Mississippi State come to their ballpark, and they're looking for a win. They're a winning team, and you got to take care of business there first. But you got to go to Alabama. I think you got to get to it, Alabama, this weekend. And to be honest with you, I think that State is capable of doing that, and I think part of that is I think Alabama is a good team, but I think that maybe they're a little fool's gold early on because they went to A&M and they won that series at College Station, and at the time that seemed like a really big deal. Not so much now. But then all of a sudden, A&M gets Sorrell back in the lineup, and they go to Knoxville and spank Tony Vitello. I mean, the SEC baseball's wild, man.
Okay. Steve Robertson talking Hail State SEC baseball. Okay, so they've got 18 games left in conference play. What do they have to do to get in the postseason?
Well, I think you got to go win them all, win the SEC championship. No, that's not going to happen. But I think at a bare minimum, you got to get 10 more, and then probably win a couple of games at Hoover. I think that's the bare minimum. I think you get to 14, you're probably holding your breath a little bit. You get to 15, I just don't know if there's enough games to get to 15, right? I mean, I just don't know. It's just not realistic, right? But you just got to take it a week at a time and just kind of stack up weeks. I mean, you start looking too far down the road, it can be a little bit intimidating for you, a little bit overwhelming. And I think that's where I think veterans on this team have to kind of step up and really keep people in the day rather than thinking about, okay, how many do we need to win by the end of the year? You and I can talk about it because we don't play the games. We don't coach the game. But yeah, I mean, I don't think you can drop any more midweeks either. I mean, I think you think about your RPI. If you're going to be 13, 14 wins in the SEC, a lot of times that gets you in, and it did last year. I mean, you had a handful of teams that went to Hoover with losing records and still made the tournament. But yeah, I don't think you can drop midweeks and put yourself in a situation where you have a sub 500 record in the SEC play and an RPI that's a little bit shaky. So you got to win those games too. But you need some teams that you've beaten to go out there and do some good things for you too. And but yeah, I think at a bare minimum you've got to get to 13 and then do some damage in Hoover. But I think 14 you feel okay. But I just think it's one of those things too where right now I think the focus is we got to put together a 3-in-1 week this week, and then we'll reassess where we are next week.
No, that's fair enough. I mean, I get it. We're trying to project all the way out about the postseason, and there's no doubt they're just looking at the top half of the first inning against UAB tomorrow night. I get that, but this has to be discussed where we are. So, do you believe if Lemonis pulls off everything that you just said, which I think is a tall task? Okay, so that's that's 12, that's 10, going 10-8 down the stretch, and then 2 in Hoover. Okay, so that's 12 more SEC wins in basically 7 weekends, 6 regular season plus Hoover. All right, I don't know that they've got the starting pitching to even come close to doing this, but all right, so if Lemonis does all this and makes the postseason, is he safe? If he doesn't make the postseason, are they going to make a change?
I think you both down to that. I think the way you've expressed it is probably how I see it too. I mean, I think you make the postseason. I think he's back. If he doesn't, I think then you absolutely have to institute a change. I mean, it's 3 times in 4 years you don't make the NCAA tournament. Making an NCAA regional at a place like Mississippi State should be a foundational standard.
Sure.
Right? I mean, maybe you have a 1 year, you get to the end of a talent cycle and you have some injuries, and maybe you sneak in as a 3 or something. But yeah, not making the tournament should be an absolute rarity at a place like Mississippi State, and certainly not to not make it 3 and 4 years. But I'm not saying you go ink a long-term deal. Maybe you work together a 2-year extension or a 1-year extension. I don't know how Zach Selman views all that kind of stuff.
I don't even think you have to extend him. I mean, this day and age, every sport is just a 1-year deal because players moving around, and of course coaches will leave in a heartbeat, as you know, Steve. You've covered this game long enough to know the ebb and flow there. So I don't know why let's say he makes this run that you and I are trying to, 10 wins, 10 more conference wins plus 2 more in Hoover, and makes a 2 or 3 seed on the road, and they bring him back. I don't think you have to extend him. You just let him play out his last year on his contract.
Yeah, and that's always a possibility too. And again, that's the decisions that Zach Selman's got to make. But yeah, I would say if he makes a postseason, and I mean the NCAA because everybody's going Hoover, But I think you're pretty safe in saying that Lemonis is going to be back next year. But the reality
a large percentage And I don't know what it may not be over 50, okay? Because I get the vocal minority, you do too, the people who raise hell on your boards or my text line or people we see out and about. But, I mean, I'd say it's every bit of 30 plus percent, maybe more would not be happy with that either way. Your thoughts?
Yeah, that's always going to be the case, you know. And I think, listen, let's be honest. I mean, there are some people that are never going to forgive Lemonis for having 22 and 23 the year after winning a national championship. And yeah, the talk was, if you remember, the National College Baseball media, I mean, almost immediately after State winning the SEC championship in 2021, they have stayed in their early 8 for Omaha in 2022. And you have some injuries, and so people kind of give you a measure of grace. And then 23 happens, and they're like, you know what, this is just not going to work out for us. And so there were a lot of fans that just couldn't even enjoy last year, you know, because of their own, you know, their feelings about the direction of the program. And
I get it.
And exactly.
I mean, I enjoyed it because I like winning 40 games, and I thought they had a hell of a team last year. But I get those that, like you, I have people that are done regardless. They believe that while Lemonis has done some good things, that the overall body of work does not met. Well, kind of what you described last week with LSU, that it just, the standards and the production's not high enough in the program and on the field, Steve.
Yeah, and I think people just want some consistency, right? I mean, that's like, hey, you know what? We're not go to Omaha every year, but we need to be in a regional every year. We need to host more regularly. You know, we don't need to be sweating out getting a Hoover. You know, even though that's not a thing anymore. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
sure.
And I mean, you put so much time and effort, and you know, it's like every year I tell myself before the season starts, I always kind of ask myself, is this an Omaha team? And of course, you don't know that in week one, but every year when I get ready to begin our coverage, I'm already thinking about, okay, I need to make some plans to go to Omaha. You know, and I think there are a lot of fans that feel the same way that I do. And when those expectations are not realized on a regular basis, and it's like, man, I was hoping to go to Omaha, and then we don't make a regional, people are going to be upset, and they're going to be very vocal.
Hell yeah.
They deserve to be. They deserve to be.
Well, I'm still not, you know, I think the world of Chris, but I'm not bought in on this. I just don't see the front line juice to do what you're telling me they need to do to get in the postseason, Steve. I think
they have the offense to do it. And I think
Noah Sullivan is unreal, and now Ace is getting. I mean, Hunter's hitting the ball opposite way. I mean, they got some Bryce Chance knocking the hell out of the ball. They've got some good things going on there. But you and I've always talked about it for years. It comes down to what you can do on the bump, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's going to define this season, right? And the good thing is you got one of the best pitching coaches in the country. And the flip side of it is you don't have a bona fide second or 2.5 starters for the weekend. So you're having to piecemeal this thing together, which makes it more complicated. And we talked about this, I think, 2 weeks ago. I like the Evan Cieri, Ben Davis combo. To me, that makes a lot of sense because even though they're both right-handers, they're both very different, right? And I think you stretch Cieri a little bit more out this week, and you know, you kind of saw that. I think he's probably a 3 to 4 inning guy.
Yeah, because that thing got away from him. In fact, it's you and others know more, but he is very good for 3 innings. And then it looks like they figure him out, whether it's that second time through or that third time through, Steve.
You got it. You got it. And it's because the fastball is just not dynamic enough. And like we saw with Carson Ligon yesterday. And Ligon's got probably more life on the fastball, but he doesn't have a ton of movement. But what makes that fastball work for Ligon is the fact when he can throw the slider and the changeup for strikes, that makes the fastball more effectively. When he can't locate those pitches, he's throwing batting practice. And I see Cieri in kind of the same light. The guy's going to go out there and compete his tail off, but he just doesn't have upper echelon SEC stuff. And the second time through the order, people are like, okay, I know what he's going to get. And you saw that. Like, that was the thing last week when we played at OSU. LSU was starting to really get some hard contact on him, but they went to gloves. And so Parker and those guys decided to pull him, and everybody freaks out. We should have given him another inning. Well, you saw this weekend kind of what happens, and that's not a criticism of Cieri. Again, he's given you everything he has. But if he
Yeah,
could
he's
be
a
that
Tuesday
Trevor,
night guy throwing on the weekend in the
absolutely.
toughest conference in the country, Steve.
Yeah, exactly. But if he gets you 3-4, and then Ben Davis gets you 3-4, then you kind of see where you are, and then maybe Hungate finishes the game for you. I like that combination, and we talked about that preseason, Bo, is that this is going to be a completely different pitching staff from last year. Well, last year, you started the year with 3 bona fide starters, and then Nate gets hurt, but you still have Cal Steven and Durangelo to go up there and eat up about 14 innings on 27 inning weekend. Well, half your work is done. This year, it's completely different, where you have one good starter in Pico, and then you've kind of got some openers, and you've got to use your bullpen pieces. And we really felt like this bullpen was going to be the strength of this team, and they've been up and down. Let's just be fair about that.
Right.
But they were outstanding this weekend.
They were.
Hopefully you're beginning to find some roles. And I'll tell you another big move, too. It goes unnoticed at times, but Gatlin Sanders at second base. And, sometimes you find the guy that kind of gels you a little bit. I had done the numbers heading into last weekend, and I believe that was maybe 6 of the 8 losses at the time, and maybe even more than that, but could almost be directly attributed to errors at second base. And you go to LSU, we make an error at second base, and then my pitcher's got to go through 16 more pitches, and then then another game you make an error at second base, and they score 3 runs after the error. If you make the routine play, Bo, you're going to win a lot of baseball games. And I think that's who Gatlin Sanders is. He will make the routine play, and at times the spectacular play. He's not going to be Roberto Alomar, right? But he is a guy that can go out there and consistently plays for you, and he's almost hitting 400 right now. And so I think that could be a move that we look back on that maybe doesn't get a lot of headlines, but you look back and say, hey, maybe this solidified the infield.
Okay. Well, and I think this is what people have. We're visiting with Steve Robertson on the Out of Bounds show. He joins us on the Farm Bureau Insurance guest line, and genespage.com, 247 Sports. Nobody covers Hail State baseball like Steve. I think that is why people are frustrated, Steve, is your other 2 starters at Mississippi State. They have to, and I know they missed on the missed. The Indiana State dude hasn't been what they wanted. There's been some other guys that are not there or ready. Now, I will give Parker credit. He made, Brooks Auger, among others, came around late, Black, and so on last year. And I think that's a testament to Justin Parker continuing to develop kids, especially like you said, once Dome didn't give you anything all year because of injury, but you can't have that talent level of starter for Saturday and Sunday at Mississippi State, Steve. That can't happen.
I agree. And what's interesting? I remember having a conversation with John Cohen, middle of 2021, saying, how does Mississippi State only have 1 bona fide starter? How does that happen? That a program like Mississippi State should always have, guys knocking down the door wanting to pitch on weekends. Now, to be fair, we expected Charlie Foster to be a factor on Sunday, and he's been a little bit banged up, for over the course of the last month. And that he's a guy that is a real bona fide dude and probably a future Friday night guy in the Southeastern Conference. And you really needed, or you'd like to have had him pitch and maybe get his feet wet on Sunday this year, and then be able to challenge next year maybe to be the Friday or Saturday guy. So that's a factor. But you've got to feel like you shouldn't have to piecemeal this thing together. And as you mentioned, you go out and you get Pruitt, you thinking he's going to be a factor, but he was a guy that was a little banged up. Like you look at Carson Ligon, the year at Miami, you get him, he was a little bit banged up, and those issues have lingered, when they come to Mississippi State. And so, you got to be able to go out there if you're Mississippi State with the greatest cathedral in all of college baseball and the greatest fan base in the world. And you got to be able to sell those guys on coming, hey, this is where you want to be, And you've lost some big name guys to Arkansas and LSU the last couple of years, and that's got to change. And it's kind of a chicken and egg thing, right? Those 2 programs have been more consistent, and so how do you convince that guy that hey, this is the way to go? And so that's the challenge that Justin Parker and Chris Lemonis have.
What about the you said last week? Look, this team is still playing hard, and they could have folded on Friday. They came back. They won games. You got guys hustling, taking extra bags, things like that. Pitchers grinding, the whole thing. So but there was a lot of chatter this weekend about clubhouse friction. Now, a lot of times clubhouse friction is just part of it. Guys want to compete and win. I don't care if somebody's F-bombing somebody else. People are like Lemonis has lost the clubhouse. I've got about a minute and a half. What are your thoughts on that? What is your reaction to that?
I would say no. There's always going to be, it's like racing cars. Always going to be a little trade and pain because you get a bunch of alpha dogs and in a room together, you're going to have some of that.
Sure.
But now that's the laziest thing ever. Is like, oh well, the Coach A has lost the team. Well, it's easy to say. You don't have any access to the locker room. You don't have any access to the roster. But it's become a familiar refrain in the social media culture. Oh, well, they've lost the team with no knowledge whatsoever. Anybody can throw that out there. And then people are like, well, we're losing, so maybe that's true. But I can tell you, I think you don't have that Tanner Allen big personality guy. But you got guys like Noah Sullivan. You got guys like Joe Powell that have been very good leaders. And I thought Hunter Hines stretching that single into a double and making the head first slide. Hunter's not a big rah-rah guy. But when you see that guy out there taking the extra base and then making the swim move to get in there safely at second, that's indicative to me of a team that is still bought in and believes in each other and what they're doing.
I agree with that. We'll see. They're teetering. They're hanging on by a thread, and I'm impressed with the way Hunter Hines is hitting the baseball to the opposite field, Steve.
12-game hit streak, longest of his career, tied for the longest of his career.
Well, he's obviously still working hard, so give the young man credit. All right, thanks, Steve Robertson. Appreciate it. He joined us on the Farm Bureau Insurance guest line. Bundle your auto and home and save with your local Farm Bureau Insurance agent. We're live in the Bank Plus studio. 1059 The Zone, ESPN, the Out of Bounds Show, brought to you by the super cool Peter Millar merch. Peter Millar clothes at the Rogue Men's Store, I-55 North Frontage Road. And those Martin Dingham shoes are really, really good looking, too, at the Rogue Men's Store. Newly renovated Rogue Men's Store.